Okay. So today, we're continuing our discussion of transportation issues. We call this managed transportation, but kind of more about modes and things like that. So again, the 5 modes of transport. Trucking, which is broken down into LTL and TL, truckload or less than truckload. Rail, so interestingly enough, about 40% of all freight movements. But this is coal and oil and iron ore and all that kind of stuff. Air, more popular due to global manufacturing, but you'll go broke trying to fly everything by air, unless it's really small. Water is the way that most of us do it, but you'll usually need another mode of transportation to pick it up from the dock, like a truck or a train or something. And then pipeline for crude oil, natural gas, coal slurry, that type of thing. And then there's trade-offs for each cost or mode. So air transport's the most expensive, followed by trucking, then rail, pipeline, and water's cheapest. But air transport's also the most expensive. So 4 criteria to consider when selecting a mode. When do you need it? How badly do you need it on that day? How much can you afford to pay? And other non-economic factors. So multimodal shipments, also known as intermodal, involve more than one transport mode. So if you're on the water, you're usually going to use a multimodal shipment because you're going to go from the water. When you get to the dock, you have a truck pick it up. Containers need to be designed to fit on trucks, trains, ships, and aircraft. Here's our transport modes, all 5 of them, and then the advantages and disadvantages of each. Motor carriage is highly available, reliable. It can be impacted by weather. Air freight, we've talked about. Rail, large volumes. Limited accessibility, though, and the trains often don't run on time here in the US. And then water is very cheap, but also takes a long time. So shipping companies, customers, suppliers, and freight forwarders. So you have, in the transport business, you have shippers, the originator or sender of a shipment. This is the supplier usually. You have the customer, the acquirer, receive the goods, which is the buyer. And then you have suppliers, who manufactures the goods. Doesn't have to be the shipper, but usually is. And freight forwarders. Third party combines small shipments into full loads. So the freight forwarder, again, is the guy that buys the whole vessel or the whole truck and then sells off the pieces and pockets the difference. So they've got skin in the game. Or the broker works on commission. So it makes the freight forwarder makes money on the difference between the full load that the forwarder pays and the small shipment rate the customer pays the forwarder. So the forwarders, for that reason, will need power of attorney to complete the customs documents. And they'll need certificate of origin. Well, these are the documents that they'll have to complete on the customer's behalf: certificate of origin, commercial invoice, export declaration, etc. Traffic patterns. Onboard navigation systems are often used in conjunction with routing and scheduling software that involve rerouting of vehicles, rescheduling of deliveries, etc. This is becoming more and more prevalent with the nav systems, where they can look back in the office and see where the truck's at and reschedule the truck, especially for pickup and delivery in town kind of stuff. Shipping lanes and routes, best practices for managing shipping routes, use of pre-scheduled shipments, pickup and delivery frequencies. You want it regularly scheduled. Use of fixed routes instead of variable ones, and working with delivery time window. So nowadays, when you come to pack our parts, They'll give you a window when you have to be there to unload your truck. Incoterms, otherwise known as International Commercial Terms. Incoterm. Developed by the International Chamber of Commerce some time ago, probably in the 60s. Now on the 2020 version, they usually update it every 10 years. Terms have been structured to incrementally increase the obligations, control, risk, and cost of one party while decreasing the obligations of the other party. So on this end, it's the customer that has all the risk. On this end, it's the supplier. Transfer of title is not covered by any of the Incoterms. So none of this has anything to do with transfer of the title of the goods. That's between you and the supplier. It must be separately specified by the parties. And Incoterms can be divided into two groups, multimodal and single modal. So here's the ones that we would usually come into contact with. Ex works, FCA or free carrier at, delivered at terminal, delivered at place, delivered duty paid. So Ex works, the supplier doesn't really do anything. All they do is they make the parts available for you to bring your truck, park at their dock, and you to load the parts onto your truck. All the supplier does with Ex works is make the parts available at a particular day. Free carrier at, on the other hand, is similar to Ex works, but the supplier has to load the goods onto your truck, which is why we use FCA, because we don't want to have to be involved with loading the parts onto the truck. That's the supplier. So if that's the case, FCA is what we use for 90% of our freight. Delivered at terminal, or name place of destination, and delivered at place. Sometimes we'll use these. Delivered duty paid. This is the best deal for the customer because the supplier pays for everything, the duties, the shipping, the storage. They just drop it on your deck or on your dock at no cost, no freight cost anyway, or transportation cost. So DDP is the only Incoterm when the seller is responsible for import clearance. All these other import terms, the buyer is responsible for clearance of the customs. The same term is different under UCC. So UCC, remember, is Universal Commercial Code. So UCC used to have all of these freight terms. And see, it's 2002. They haven't updated it since then because Incoterms have become so popular. Universal Commercial Code just quit doing this. But this is all FOB destination, FOB shipping point, FOB origin, all this mess that we made up our own shipping stuff. And nobody uses it. Well, you shouldn't be using it anymore because PACCAR's an international company. You need to use the international terms. And then this is the 2020 version, I think, of the terms. Yep. And it'll cover each term and the advantages and disadvantages of each. And there's a lot of terms, like I say, these ones down here in blue we never use. And we don't use some of these ones in pink either. Really, the only ones that we use a lot are FCA, like 90%, and we may use DAP or DDP. Hazardous and regulated materials must comply with federal, state, and local laws. In the US, it's regulated by Environmental Protection Agency. Very strict documentation and audit requirements with these regulations. They had to get very hard on people because everybody would say it wasn't their fault. But now, if you generated it, you're going to own that sucker. And then there's security considerations for terrorism and other things. So CTPAT, we heard a lot of talk about this, is Joint Government Business Initiative to communicate security guidelines to the supply base. Packard participates in CTPAT. So the CPB or the U.S. Customs and Border Protection Service are the sponsors. And when they join the anti-terror partnership, companies sign an agreement to work with border protection to protect the supply chain, identify security gaps, and implement security measures.
Maybe this room reserved.
Is it? Because I'm in the middle of a deal. I was looking on the list there and it wasn't on there. All right, so here's CTPAT. If you have more questions, it's there. CPB, which is Customs Border Protection, security profile outlines specific security measures. It's a pretty good program. Then you have ISO 28000, which is security management systems. And then you have something else that's become more common here, the authorized economic operator. Building blocks of the World Customs Organization. Companies can be accredited as by customs as AEOs when they prove to have high quality and internal processes. Mostly what we use is CTPAT, but this is another program. Along with automated commercial invoice. This just helps move your stuff through customs. And then they've got something called surety ship. Obligation sometimes referred to as a guarantee. So it's like a letter of credit. The three parties involved are the creditor, the party to whom the obligation is owed, which is usually the supplier, the principal debtor or the principal, which is usually, I guess this one's the buyer and this one's the seller, the supplier. The principal is the supplier, the creditor is the buyer, and the surety bond underwriter, which is an insurance company. So that's surety ship. It guarantees the performance of the principal, the supplier, and is secondarily liable. If the supplier can't pay, then the insurance will. Government regulations, import-export regulations. Here's the Export Administration Act. So you can't just ship anything you want to China. They have all kinds of stuff here that you can look into about what you can and can't ship and documents and stuff that have to be done. So restricted parties and countries. So country may deny persons entry from other countries. Visas and quotas, restrict quantity of goods. We've heard a lot about this in the news lately. Countries can also require foreign workers to obtain a visa, which will restrict the amount of time the person can be in the country. So these are all import-export regulations that have to do with trade.
Finish the news office.
I got about 15 minutes to finish.
We're 15 minutes late with the meeting.
All right. Well, is there nothing else open?
There's nothing else open on this floor.
All right.
Third floor under Brendan's office, there's also.
All right. We're going to take a quick break here while I move. But I'll just go back to my desk and annoy my neighbors. Be like major short. Okay. So most of you are probably familiar with this. You've seen some studies or done some questions and slides on it. Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. This is the act itself if you want to read it. From 1979. And then it was amended in 1998 to include domestic bribery issues. And then there's anti-boycott legislation, prohibits doing business with countries that support a boycott of one nation against the other the U.S. government doesn't support. So you're an Arab country boycotting Israel, we can't do business with that company. Also requires reporting to government if you are asked to participate in the boycott. So here's some export documents. There's a bunch of them. Bill of lading, transmittal letter, letter of credit, doc receipt, delivery instructions, insurance certificate, export declaration, consular, and manifest. Those are all documents that you got to fill out if you're exporting to another country. These are all documents you got to fill out if you're importing. Arrival notice, delivery order, customs, freight, carrier certificate, special customs invoice. So kind of get a general idea of the difference between the exports and the imports, because they'll ask questions on them. And then payment mechanisms, the letter of credit, and big companies like Packard don't really use letters of credit anymore. We do ACH or bank-to-bank payment. Small to medium-sized companies may be required if they're doing business overseas to get a letter of credit. Bill of exchange or a draft, kind of similar. And trade can also occur with the buyer's affiliate or subsidiary, which is we do on a regular basis. And you can open an account that is billed monthly, which we also do. But these last two are for bigger firms. Broker management. So customs brokers, these are the guys that work by commission. Licensed by the government, responsible for knowing which customs regulations and laws apply to the shipment, and also accurate classification of the goods, and preparing and submitting the docs. Also collecting and paying appropriate tariff and duties. It's the broker that pays those, but they collect them from the customer. All right. Question here. To shore up supplies of crude oil, you have begun importing it from Indonesia. They're already importing supplies from Nigeria as well as from several other smaller producers. Due to the originating countries of your imports, your organization feels it is necessary to abide by the CTPAT initiative, ensuring the safety of the shipments. One of the provisions that your organization should meet is to what? Any guesses? Pretty sure it's not D.
Is it alpha?
That's kind of what I would go with. That's what I'm thinking. Let's see what we got here. Alpha it is. All right. All right. One more. Incoterms can best be described as a uniform set of rules that what? Here I would just go with the longest answer. It's usually right. Let's see if that's true here in this case. So it'd be A, I'm thinking. It is. It's amazing how often that works with ISM questions. All right, it's actually 15 questions out there, but let's just do the first 7. And we'll go over answers at 2:25 unless it's done earlier. All right, let's go over some answers real quick here. Number 1 is Charlie. Smart seal is applied to a shipping container after inspection at the point of origin. It's smart and there's obvious if there's been any tampering after the seal was applied. 2 is Alpha. An arrival notice is an important document, not an import document, not an export document. Kind of a trick question there. 3 is Bravo. X works. Means that the title doesn't, but the risk passes to the buyer at the end of the supplier's process, meaning buyer has to load it on the truck. 4 is Delta. United States does not sanction the Arab League boycott of Israel, so it's illegal to comply with the request. 5 is also Delta. Industry-specific standards have little bearing on customs processes. 6 is Charlie. The world's largest insurance companies will generally insure anywhere in the world, thus there is a greater chance supply manager will be able to consolidate suppliers to arrange and pay for insurance costs. And 7 is Delta. Access to empty containers is a detail that can be worked out with the carrier. It's more a problem at the point of departure than the point of arrival. All right, so I will post the rest of these answers if you want to continue on and do all 15 of them. And we'll continue on with some more transport stuff tomorrow. Hey, guys.
Hey, Rick, thank you.